Welcome to Principal Matters Podcast, episode number 437. And we are so excited for our listeners to hear the conversation Will has with Derek Mitchell. So hang tight for that. But first, we are going to start with question of the week. And just as a reminder to our listeners, the question of the week is supported by Summer Pops Math Workbooks. Principles when students practice math over the summer, math scores go up. So it's time to think about your summer math plan this year. And a great way to start is by ordering those free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com. So welcome, listeners. We're excited. Hi, Will. We've got a really good question today, don't we?
We do. And the question this week came from a listener. And I'm sure he's not the only one that has this question. So we're just going to bring it for the next 5 minutes for you and I to respond to. This listener asks, I'm a lead principal. When do I know it's the right time to move on? Once you've maximized the school or are high performing, or is there ever a time? And Jen, when you and I were talking about this off the air, I was joking and just saying, okay, I'm not God. How am I going to be able to tell somebody when to move on? But I want to respect the heart of this question, which is because I'm sure a lot of leaders struggle with that. Like, okay, how do I know when I stay planted, and how do I know when I need to move somewhere else? So, what do you want to go first?
It reminds me of when I talked to my friend Diane one day. She had taught, she was an amazing teacher and she taught for many years. And she came to me and said she was retiring. And I said, "Oh my gosh, how did you know?" And she said, "You just know." And I hate to, because it seems like I'm cheating a little bit with the question, but I think when it's time to move on. I certainly don't think you stay in a job you don't like or that doesn't challenge you until you get a certain data point, nor do I think you stay if you don't want to. I think your own measure, like this question says, once you have maximized the local school as an option, and maybe the answer to that is yes, but the maximization has to be your own definition. I think just by asking this, it might be an indicator that there's a little restlessness there. I don't know the listener, I don't know the story, but it's time to move on when it's time to move on.
Mm.
Will, it does sound like I cheated there and took an easy exit ramp, but what do you think?
This is a question that I've responded to in so many different ways because of leaders that reach out to me that are also kind of at that crossroads. And so for a shameless plug, Jen, it's one of the reasons I wrote my um, new book, uh, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love, which I have not announced yet the release date on that. But because I feel like what you said is so true and so helpful, but then the teacher side of me also wants to give people some tools, some things to like help them navigate choices. So I'm just going to mention some guiding questions. One, do you love what you're doing? And you said that too, because if you love what you're doing, it's a good reason to keep doing it. But two, would the option of doing something else give you a chance to love something even more than what you're doing now? Because that's really attractive. And what a privilege if you do get the opportunity to do something you would love even more than what you're doing, because not everybody gets that opportunity. But I will say that I've had the blessing of being able to step out of things I've loved to do things I love more. And that feels really good. But then sometimes you have to leave things you love because you recognize that the politics involved or the other people involved or decision makers involved may be in a situation where you can predict I'm not going to keep loving this
Hmm.
because and so I need to go make sure that I'm in a place where I'm going to keep loving this. And so those are things you can't control either. And then that restlessness piece that you mentioned, I just want to address it for a second because I think that we could go a lot of directions on this, but I just will say this. I think that high achieving, ambitious people tend to be restless because we always love new challenges and new things and most leaders fall in those categories. So that's normal. But I do want to warn you that there's two sides to that coin. On the one side, there's the restlessness that keeps you growing, and that's a good thing. Keeps you curious, keeps you wanting to experience that new thing and the next thing. But then the other side of that coin can be detrimental if you think that whatever you're doing at any given time is going to completely fulfill you. That's a recipe for disillusionment. And I know I sound like an old man, but I'm just trying to help keep people away from the trap of thinking that my job is going to just give me the great all the joy I've ever wanted. That's just not life. That's not the way life works.
Well, I'm glad you went there because if you didn't, I was going to. It's one piece of us, right? Our job is one piece of us. And then we are also moms, dads, sisters, spouses, partners. We are, very, very deep as people. And I think there's a lot of other really compelling questions to think about. Do I want to move? Do I love my community? Where are my children or my partner or my spouse? Where are they in this mix? Is this a decision I'm making for me or for my family? What's the money say? Am I place bound or career bound? So it's way too complex for Will and I to answer. I think sometimes people want, principals are teachers who are compliant students. We want someone to tell us what to do. And unfortunately, Will and Jen on a podcast can't tell you what to do, but we can tell you what to look for, and to, just take some time with people you love or with a really good whiteboard and a brand new expo and make a pro and con list and think it through. And then there's also the factor of opportunity. What's out there even? I talked to a principal not too long ago, and his words, he said, I'm pretty bored here. Things are going really well. I don't want to be bored, but I also know I have the best school, the best community. Why would I ever leave this job? And so then we started talking about other things he could do to combat the boredom. It
Yes.
would be a bad idea for him to leave a perfect job because he's bored. Fix the boredom, not the job.
I love that, Jen. Thank you so much for that. So listeners, if there's anyone who's also wrestling with those kinds of questions, and it would be helpful to just to get somebody on the other side of you because there may not be somebody on the other side of you. Um, I'm sh- there may be somebody right next door to you that who you could pick up the phone and talk to that you'd be surprised that they've been through this too. There may be somebody in the school down the street from you that you could pick up the phone and talk to. But you're also welcome to reach out to us because Jen and I have walked through these things before. In whether that's an informal conversation where we just jump on a quick call and just reflect with you, or if you want to check out some of the options that we have for coaching with leaders and you'd like to do some scheduled formal conversations where we just problem solve with you, you can reach out and talk to us about those as well. So thank you, Jen, for that Q&A. And listeners, you can always find all these resources at williamdparker.com. And Jen, how can they stay connected with you?
They can find me at jenschwanke.com.
Support for Principal Matters comes from DigiCoach and its walkthrough tool. I want you to picture walking through classrooms, observing teachers and students. In just 10 minutes, you'd hope to see good instructional strategies and student learning taking place, or maybe you have questions about something missing from instruction or planning. Instead of taking 30 minutes to write a follow-up email or leaving your teacher feeling unsupported, wouldn't it be great to have an app on your phone or tablet where you could send immediate feedback while also collecting data? Enter DigiCoach, a customizable walkthrough and coaching tool created by school leaders for school leaders with thousands of pre-written, research-based commendations and coaching tips empowering you to provide quick, actionable feedback. DigiCoach is not an evaluative tool. Instead, it is an easy-to-use feedback and coaching tool, an efficient way to store your notes and collect data for improving student outcomes right in your hands. It can be used on iPhone, Android, or tablets and includes speech-to-text functions. Make the most of your walkthroughs with a tool that saves you time and enhances meaningful feedback to your teachers. Go to digicoach.com to learn more, and please tell them Principal Matters recommended you check them out. That's digicoach.com. Hi, friends. Did you know that Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, has been downloaded over 1.5 million times? We are so proud to share conversations, interviews, and resources to support leaders like you who are serving school communities worldwide. And I'd like to invite you to explore our books, our professional development offerings, our Grow Academies, our masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations, because we're here to help you and your teams build schools that you're proud to call home. So here's my question. How are you planning to keep growing in the semester ahead? We're booking events right now for the next 2 years, and we would love to serve you in person or virtually. So visit williamdparker.com and click services, or email me at will@williamdparker.com to connect. I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today's show.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 437. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're talking about partners in school innovation with my special guest, Dr. Derek Mitchell. Dr. Derek Mitchell is the CEO of Partners in School Innovation, a nonprofit that provides solutions for educational inequities in underperforming schools. Since 2009, he has focused on building the skills of educators and leaders to improve student outcomes, particularly in marginalized communities, through equity-centered school improvement. Dr. Mitchell holds a PhD in educational psychology from UCLA, which he told me his mom would want me to make sure you know this. And he has held leadership roles in various educational organizations, including Oakland Unified School District and Prince George's County. Under his leadership, Partners in School Innovation has received support from major foundations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and his work continues to advocate for lasting systemic change in education. Dr. Derek Mitchell, man, what a privilege to have you in the room. Welcome to Principal Matters Podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you, and maybe why I mentioned your dear mother.
Thank you, William. This is wonderful, this opportunity. Thank you. This particular podcast is a favorite of mine. And so I'm feeling a little bit, verklempt. It's like meeting your heroes. Yes, in terms of filling in some gaps, it might surprise folks. One of the things that surprises my staff every once in a while when it comes up is that I spent some time as a dancer in my career.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm going to have to ask for some
right.
demonstrations later.
Few places, if you're super ingenious, you can actually find, clips of me that have been broadcast, which is kind of interesting on its own right. But thank you. My life and career in education came after a few other careers, even though it seemed to be fated. But I spent some time in the film industry, doing some work in publicity, and I co-founded a software company making video games. So I also did that.
Wow, what a varied career. Okay, Derek. So because this is my podcast, I just have to stop for a second and ask you this question. I think you and I are close to the same age, but I'm just curious, what kind of dancing is your favorite?
Oh, my favorite's modern.
Yeah.
And I went to undergrad at a school where Twyla Tharp also went to school. And so the college had a bit of a favorite of having the dance department do Twyla's choreography.
Oh
and so
my gosh.
It's a big favorite of mine.
Okay, I'm going to tell a personal story that will date me for sure. So when I grew up in Northwest Tennessee, rural backwoods areas. And then my dad re-enlisted in the Navy when I was in high school, and he moved us to New York. Okay, so here I am, small town boy, New York. And I go out into the neighborhood for the first time, and everybody my age, and this was the 80s, Derek, everybody else my age could break dance. And and literally they would be on the street, you would carry the boombox out there, put cardboard out on the street. People and the kids my age, they would spend their whole days just dancing. I was just like, you talk about culture shock, but I've never told this story publicly. Privately, I would go back to my room every night and I would try to figure out how to dance like my friends. And I'm a horrible dancer, Derek. So I'm just bowing down right now to the fact that you are not only a great dancer, but like a professional dancer. So kudos for that, my friend. Hey, let's do this. Because your work is supporting schools, especially in marginalized communities, I want to talk about that work in just a little bit, but I want to talk about you for just a moment too. Tell us your story. How have you been motivated? How has your own story motivated you to serve schools through the work you're doing with Partners in School Innovation?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I guess the fastest way to tell this story is it's sort of a tale of two cities mental model for you. My own personal education has been a combination of what folks would call the worst of education and what folks would consider the best. And in my own education, I kind of vacillated between the two, depending upon where things were. So I grew up in Chicago in a community that was predominantly Black and heavily impacted by poverty. The West Side, the South Side. We moved, fairly often, particularly when the rent changed. We would move, and so I had the experience of a number of schools. For a short time, I was at a school called Francis Scott Key early in my education, which was a wonderfully abundant school. It was one of the rare public schools that bordered a suburb in Chicago, and so it still had white people in it. And so it was my first experience with, white people. And I found the place amazing, and had lots of opportunities to learn interesting things. I was Louis Armstrong in the school play. And I was the kind of kid who loved school. Part of me felt like because I was the fifth kid of six at the time, my baby sister came along several years later. My brothers and sisters all went off to school and I was left at home. And so I had felt like I was just missing out every day. They would come home with these great stories and all these new friends and these fun things to learn. And I was stuck at home. So when I finally got to go, it was the greatest thing in the world to me as a kid. But one of the times we moved, we ended up in a community that was the exact opposite of Francis Scott Key. It's an elementary school called Robert Emmett on Chicago's West Side. And where Francis Scott Key had fully stocked classrooms and lots of books to read. Francis Scott Key was a wonderful place. Emmett had desk chair consoles and shelves that were empty and chalk and chalkboards. That's it, nothing else. And so it was a pretty scarce place to try to learn. And so because my early education was so rich, I actually tested fairly well. And because of that, the principal at the school made a lot of different opportunities available to me. They said they had the smart kid, they had responsibility to, indulge my interests. And so I learned lots of things. I learned photography. I learned to play the guitar. Just it's all based on, the principal and the principal's contacts, people in the neighborhood. And eventually the principal signed me up for a science fair. Because at the time I had this fascination with cockroaches as a kid. I had read somewhere that they would survive a nuclear war. And this was a time when, nuclear war felt like a real thing. We were doing drills, hiding under desks as if that would make a difference, right? And so I thought, how is that possible that these, little creatures could survive a nuclear war? And so I set out to kind of figure out what exactly they could survive. And so for weeks, I would, capture them and torture these creatures in different ways, from magnifying glasses to freezing them in a freezer to, submerging them in water, just trying to figure out what it is, roaches could survive. And for a show and tell at school, I had actually brought all my data in to share with my classmates on the wonderful survivability of these creatures, and it went over really, really well. There was laughter and jokes, and the teacher thought it was kind of fascinating that I was so stuck on these particular bugs and knew so much about them. And the principal signed me up to a science fair on the north side of Chicago, which is a very different world from where I was. And so some Sunday I found myself and my mom taking a bus, a train, and then another bus to the whole other part of Chicago that I didn't even know existed. And I noticed as we were heading there, some really amazing things. I noticed neighborhoods became greener, and the presence of police almost disappeared. And when we got to the school, it was this castle-looking building on a hill, surrounded by green grass, and I thought, this is a school? And so we went into this place, and I've got my poster with my uh, cockroaches stuck base, with tape on the poster and diagrams. And I'm experiencing this science fair where kids were doing the most amazing things, volcanoes and helium balloons shaped like the space shuttle, and ant farms, live ants. And I thought, oh my God, I could have had live cockroaches. That would have been amazing. And so doing this whole science fair competition bit, I realized that the school that I was doing this work in was incredibly abundant. It was like Francis Scott Key times 10. The class had beakers and running water and fire. The science labs had fire in the classroom. I could have been doing my experiments in school, which was pretty incredible. And I started wondering what is the difference between my school and this school? Why is it that this school has all these things, and Emmett had none of them? I mean, we didn't even have science labs, and so I'm getting all kind of wound up in the difference between these things, and I turn to my mom and I say, Mom, why is it that they have this? And she said, Baby, I don't know, but that's not what you're here to do. You're here to teach these people about cockroaches. So get your head in the game. Let's roll up this paper and let's get to work. So we did our thing, and kids loved it. Loved it. And some of these kids had never seen roaches before, which I found, kind of astounding. But that experience made me realize that we're setting our students up from the very beginning on a two-tiered system of education. Some kids get running water and fire in their science labs. Some kids get science labs, and others, they're stuck with their imaginations, and trying to learn things in a community that is something less than ideal. And I felt honestly like my principal had set me up, that I was going to be laughed at by these folks, and that's not what happened. But I got back to school, and I took my honorable mention certificate, because yes, we got those then too. Everybody got something. Back to school, and the principal was so proud. She immediately got on the intercom and started talking, which was very embarrassing, as you can no doubt imagine. But she looked at me and she saw that I wasn't doing very well, and she asked me what's wrong. And I just started explaining how different that school was than our school, and asking her why it was like this. And before I knew it, I was crying, describing it. And she sat down like a great leader does, and grabbed the tissue paper and gave it to me to dab my eyes and blow my nose. And she said, Derek, I don't know why things are the way they are. And you're right, it's not fair, but maybe you'll be the one to fix it. So dry your eyes and get back to class. And that's what I did. And I've basically been in that class ever since. My life goal is to make sure that kids can have a rich education in their neighborhoods, right? That the curiosity and interest that drives learning on the part of every living being should be indulged, whether or not you're wealthy or poor, black or white, urban or rural. And that's pretty much been the work I've done most of my life since then.
Derek, Dr. Derek Mitchell, what a foundational, thank you for telling that story. You gave me chill bumps, and it's not often that Will is without words when I'm listening to someone tell me a story, but thank you for transporting us there, because I think one of the most beautiful parts of that story is you're helping us to see school through the eyes of a child, and helping us understand what is not. All of us can look at schools from the outside, or we can go visit schools, or we can talk about our own school experience. But what is it like to look at the school in the skin of the children that are in it? What is it like to experience it for them? And that's such a pivotal moment for you of knowing that. And that foundational experience has really carried on through your work in educational psychology, your degree from UCLA, your work in other school districts, and to where you are today. leading partners in school innovation. So let's go there for a minute, because I want you to talk about, and I know this is a bigger question than you can answer even in this podcast. So let's help listeners understand, how are you helping schools and decision makers see the potential in the most underserved and challenging school settings?
Certainly. Partners has now supported work in about 70 different school districts across the country. And our work is entirely focused on building the skills of leaders in the most challenged contexts to unleash the potential of their teachers and their students to excel and thrive. We believe, and we know, because our experience bears it out, that brilliance is everywhere, that excellence is abundant, and it's up to us to unlock the necessary keys for students and teachers and leaders to reach their potential. Um, we've seen brilliant outcomes in the Mississippi Delta, where a lot of folks had no belief that it could happen there. We've seen brilliant outcomes in the most challenging urban communities in Oakland and San Jose. And we've seen excellence and brilliance in the inner city of Philadelphia, and so in every place in between. And so part of what we do is help leaders shift their thinking from this concept of scarcity to one of abundance. Anyone in any job can spend all their time concerned about what they don't have, right? Literally anyone in any job, because no place has everything, right? And so a big part of our work at the onset is to help leaders appreciate what is there. And in the case of school leaders, the teaching staff. I mean, you've got 12, 15, 22, 7, whatever the number is, adults who get up every day, travel distances to unleash the possibilities of other people's children. Right? I mean, they've dedicated their lives to it. And there's nothing more amazing and more powerful than their potential to do that work, right? And so it starts with, the teachers in that building, and their capacity to do and be brilliant. And it expands from there, right? So recognizing the abundance that's also there. We also spend a good amount of time focusing on, with leaders particularly, on what really are they there to do, right? A lot of times, particularly new leaders, don't really have a sense of what they're there to do. But in our schools that are heavily impacted by poverty, that have long histories of chronic underperformance, the charge is pretty clear. You you want to improve, student performance, and to do that, success is in the classroom. Period.
Yeah.
That's where it has to happen. It's between students and teachers. That's where success is going to be. And so, what are you going to do as a leader to put a plan in place, have a vision that's going to improve what happens between teachers and students? And that's what we call, in our work, their wheel. We put our shoulder to the leader's wheel, but they have to have a wheel. So the first part of the work is focusing on what is their wheel. Some leaders think it starts with culture. Others believe it starts with having a belief in kids. Others feel like it's really about competence and skills, right? Some believe that it's really about parents and engagement. All those are strategies that can produce brilliance. Right. And frankly, the partners work is really great because we don't choose for them what they're going to do. You can't build leadership by taking from people their choices. Right. And so whatever their wheel is, we put our shoulder to it and work to build the capacity of that school to deliver on that vision in the work. We typically are in a school for several years, building that capacity from the ground up. We spend a lot of time focusing on distributed leadership because just as, brilliance is abundant, leadership is abundant. Um, we seem to think of leaders as this rarity in our culture, but when we scratch beneath the surface of anyone's experience, you find everyone has a role as a leader in something. Someone's a leader in their church. Any group of friends has the one person who sets the agendas. So literally leadership is everywhere. And so helping leaders pour into the leadership of the other adults in the building and of the students in the building is an accelerant for that building's ability to be and improve. And so recognizing that they don't have to do everything themselves, and they can put the systems in place that unleash the leadership of others is another key component and quality of our work going forward.
I'm going
We've
to
seen
pause.
some tremendous outcomes from it too.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states showed that IXL schools outperform other schools on state tests. With IXL, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. IXL also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about IXL is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, IXL will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off of your teachers so they can do their best work, IXL can help. Learn more at IXL.com/PM today. Principals know a strong school starts with a strong team, making sure teachers feel heard, supported, and valued. But in a busy school year, it's easy to miss how your staff is really doing. That's why I'm excited about Alpaca, a new way for school leaders to listen to their teachers and support them well. It all starts with one simple question: how are you doing? And how easy is that? Alpaca's quick pulse surveys give teachers a way to share honest feedback. No long forms or 1 to 5 scales, just meaningful insights that help you know where to celebrate and where to focus. In celebration, Alpaca makes it easy. Each month, Alpaca delivers a teacher celebration kit with care packages, recognition ideas, and fun activities. It's effortless for principals and ensures teachers feel heard and celebrated. With Alpaca, your teachers will feel heard and you will feel like a stronger leader. Make a real difference in your school's culture at alpacapacks.com/Principal Matters and get 15% off just for Principal Matters listeners. That's alpacapacks.com/Principal Matters. I'm going to pause right here, Dr. Mitchell, and I just want to encourage listeners, if you want to rewind and listen to the last 8 minutes of this conversation, you're going to get the recipe for what I know your entire PhD and all of the decades that you've been in helping schools improve. You just described it. First, it starts with that mindset of understanding that we have more opportunity than we have less. So that abundance mindset, and then recognizing your biggest assets, which are your teachers, because they can make the most difference in student learning, and the purpose of the leaders, understanding their own why. And I like how you describe it as their wheel. I call it their hats, like the different hats that they're wearing. But you're right. They have to recognize the importance of building the capacity in those whatever that area of focus is where they know growth needs to happen: culture, belief, competency, skills, engagement with the community. But then that distributing that leadership and building the systems to support that overall work that you want to see happen. That's just a really quick description of bringing it full circle to how could that boy, Derek Mitchell, have had the kind of school experience that would have given him the opportunity to just flourish. So thank you for that summary, and thank you for the work that you're doing across the U.S. I do want to ask you in particular about your coaching and embedded guidance, because you guys You're not a one and done. You don't just fly in and give advice and then leave. So talk about how partners in school innovation. And by the way, you're just singing a melody of a song I love to hear. This is the work that I've been able to do in the consulting work that I do. But I love that you guys are expanding this work with a specific target for marginalized communities. So talk about how coaching and embedding guidance has been so helpful for supporting school leaders and their teams.
Certainly. The job of leader in heavily impacted communities is a pretty lonely one. And it's often a very thankless one. It's isolating and often what is felt or perceived to be support for you is the exact opposite. We've been to schools where we are one of 9 coaches assigned to that school. Because different parts of the system aren't talking to each other and everyone's trying to help without realizing that you give someone 9, disparate supports, and it's a whole nother set of competencies they need to be able to coordinate and organize all of that and make meaning from contradictory information and then do something with that information. And so our strongest strategy for unleashing agency in leaders is through coaching. And it's job embedded coaching. We don't believe anyone can transform a long underserving school overnight, nor can they do it from the outside, right? And you can't even learn it without doing it. It's like flying an airplane, right? You can read the books and use a simulator, but how are you holding your body in the moment when you're giving a piece of hard feedback to a set of teachers? There's no simulation that's gonna make you build those skills for you. And so knowing yourself, understanding yourself, feeling empowered, and at the same time recognizing that no one without help is going to understand your expectations and meet them lickety split, right? And so having that vision as I described, and then being in a coaching sort of conversation where you're getting job embedded feedback on, I just was at a session where I observed the feedback my team gave to a leader. And for those of you who may not have had this experience before, this was an instructional leadership team meeting that my team had helped set the agenda for and did the icebreaker at the onset, but then sat back and let the meeting unfold. And one of the things we do is we position ourselves in the room in such a way that we can see the impact of the leader on the others in the room, and also have line of sight eye to eye to the leader, so that we can give cues in the moment, right? So I'm watching as this happens, and there are 3 members of the ILT that were pretty disengaged, that were having their own sort of challenging conversation about what's being talked about. And I watched as the principal and my team members sort of met eyes, and she motioned over to the group of detractors. And after the entire interaction, they had a reflective conversation about what was going on there and what could he have done differently, right, to maintain them in the conversation that was going on over time, and what is he going to do now, right? And to follow up and make sure that they're fully on board with what the team had decided. Without this kind of literal job embedded reflective piece, it's hard to see the cues that can help you be better in your work. Having another set of eyes and ears who are tuned to what's going to help you improve all the time is really the key asset. And that's the asset that we bring to the work. This isn't something your supervisor can do. This isn't something that someone who flies in every Tuesday and tells you what you did wrong the rest of the week and then flies out is going to do. We have no other purpose than you being brilliant at what you've chosen to do, right?
Wow. Wow. So what I love about that is that when you guys embed your own teams for guidance and coaching, you're giving leaders the opportunity to get the kind of immediate feedback that you would want students to get in learning, that you would want teachers to get in embedded learning. You're giving those coaches that kind of learn. You're giving those leaders that kind of learning too. This has been such a rich conversation. I want to ask you just a couple of more questions before we wrap up. A lot of times when I'm talking to leaders, whether they're new or veteran, they're leading change. And so I just want you to imagine, Derek, if you could have coffee with a leader for just a minute or two, and they were asking you for the thing, the thing to hold on to, that would be the most important, or the ideas that would be the most important for them to hold on to as they're stepping into an opportunity to make a significant change in a challenging setting. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say that of all the frameworks your district's going to provide you with, and all the podcasts you'll listen to, like this one, it really all boils down to three things. For adults to do what they need to deliver for kids comes down to really three things. Do they have the skill to do it? Do they have the will to do what needs to be done? Or do they know what to do? Do they have a way forward? Comes down to those three things. Every framework, if you look at them, that really boils down to this. And so I would say to the leaders, when you're finding that you have a colleague that's just not meeting expectations, doesn't seem to be fully engaged and on board, or no matter what happens, doesn't seem to be rising to the occasion, ask yourself, which of those three are the problem, right? Because the challenge is often we think every problem is a skill problem, right? And so we offer professional development, we provide new coaching, and we do all these things and it's not a skill problem sometimes. Sometimes it's about will. What you're talking about is not what they believe. It's not what they want to do. So they're going to nod in the moment because they understand what's socially acceptable, and they're going to go back to their classroom and shut the door and do what they do have will to do, right? Other times it's a question of whether they know what to do. If they don't have a plan forward, you can build all the skill in the world, but they'll go back to their classroom and be, what? How do I do? What am I supposed to do next? Right? And so diagnosing the skill will way. And one of we coach around this, and teachers and leaders put their staff on a trajectory about, okay, high, medium, low on each of these things. And so without a way, no amount of skill or will, it will help, because they'll just be doing all the wrong things skillfully. And without the will, no amount of skill building, right? No amount of direction is going to change it. And so if your biggest problem is skill, absolutely build skills. Be transparent about your own learning as a leader. Like, hey, I didn't know how to do this before. This is what worked for me, right? That models for them that you're a learning organization and you're a learner, they are a learner. It's okay to not have all the answers right now, to be as skillful at everything. If it's a way problem, give better direction. Be more clear. Point to others who found a way, and that can kind of forge ahead for them in community with one another. But if it's a will problem, most of our adults gain will through community with one another. And so this is why a lot of our network-based work is about bringing teachers and leaders together and learning together. And so find who is an opinion leader for that teacher, right? And then pull that person aside and say, hey, John, Mike over here hasn't seemed to be getting on board with what we're trying to do. Can you talk to him and find out what the hitch might be, and help me think through what we can do? Because he's a valuable member of our team, and we need every oar rowing in the direction that we need it rowing in. And so these kind of strategies of being intentional about diagnosing where the hitch up is, and addressing the right problem, is going to be the most useful thing you can do, I think, as a leader.
Well, what I like about that, Derek, is skill is the head, will is the heart. So you have to make sure that you're speaking to the head and the heart of learning. And as you said, for adults to deliver to students, they need skills, they need wills. But I love how you just added that third category because I never heard anybody add the third. They don't
Right.
need just skill, they need will, they need a way,
Mhm.
which the way brings us full circle, which means that they have to have access. They have to have resources. They have to have supports. They have to have connections, which is why Partners in School Innovation exists. So
Mhm.
as we wrap up, how can listeners stay connected to the work you guys are doing? Because there's some schools listening right now that are going to be like, can I get you guys to support us? Because I have the skill and I have the will, but I need some stronger ways. So how
Wonderful.
can listeners stay connected to you, Derek? And then any parting words of advice that you want to give as we wrap up?
Sure. So partners, the main thing to do is come to our website, partnersinschools.org. And we have an online community that you can join for free and get access really to the stem and stern of our approach. We've been a publicly funded and privately funded nonprofit for our entire life. So we feel like everything that's ours is yours already. Another way is to read the book. It's a brilliant book written by Justin Cohen about our work. And so, if you can pick up Change Agent, Transforming Schools from the Bottom Up, and it'll help you understand really deeply how to do some of this work, particularly with an equity orientation, right? Um, and in terms of parting advice, for leaders in schools, you're getting tons of advice all the time. And my mom used to say, advice is like armpits. Everybody has more than one, and most often than not, they smell. And so I will only say thank you for committing yourselves to supporting the learning of other people's kids. Even as we have this podcast conversation, there are teachers and leaders who've been impacted by the last hurricane that are now literally rebuilding their communities, right? Because teachers are an extraordinary community asset, and they are the focal point of so much student love and regard. And because of that, they are often called upon in times of challenge and a crisis to help schools, kids, and families and communities return to a sense of normalcy, right? And so that's happening now, in North Carolina. And so thank you is all I would say. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for deciding not to sell real estate or drive Uber for a living, and instead to pour into the future of our families and of our country. And I know it may not seem like everyone appreciates it, but I I I believe they do. Um,
Mm.
and the time and effort and energy you put into this work is gonna come back 50-fold.
Well, Dr. Derek Mitchell, we will put links in the show notes to the book Change Agents Transforming Schools from the Ground Up by Justin Cohen, which tells the stories of what's happening at Partners in School Innovation. And Principal Managed listeners, you can go online to partnersinschools.org to find out more. Um, I just have to say again, because we talked about this offline, the wisdom of your mother just makes me laugh. And I had asked you earlier, should I call you Dr. Mitchell? And you tell me tell listeners what your mother would say to that question.
I told him that you had better, because if my mom were still around, God bless her, she would say, my baby didn't spend all that time in school for you to demote him to a mister. He is Dr. Derek.
Oh. Yeah, but what I love about that, Derek, so much is, and you and I talked about this too offline, that when you go into schools, especially in marginalized communities, students need to see a Dr. Derek Mitchell, and they need to
Right.
realize what's possible for them and what the aspirations are for them, and what the moment that they're in could potentially be for them. So thank you so much for your dedication to learning. Thank you so much for giving back to communities. Thank you so much for taking the trajectory that you are on in your life of educational learning and leadership, and now pouring it back into schools where you live and across the U.S. And so, Principal Managed listeners, I know you've gained as much inspiration and value from today's conversation as I have. So thank you for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review. In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal matters.